Okay, so we're going to continue Hilchos Melicha, Siman Samach Tes. We began last time Sif Tes. Now we're going to go on to Sif Yud. Very interesting Sif Sid. It's going to bring us back a little bit to Taaruvot. Just a little bit of a review. We're already at the stage where the Melicha was done. And right before the meat or the chicken can be cooked, it has to be rinsed of the melach that was used to salt it. This salty melach, this melach that is used to extract the blood, contains in it some blood. This blood, however, at some point can dry out completely. So initially, the halacha in Sifches discussed what happens if you did not remove this melach, either by rinsing it or by the first choice of niput, removing the salt by shaking it off, that you don't have to be so concerned with the niputs if it did end up going into the water, because ultimately the water eliminated the salt, or most of the salt, a good amount of salt. And this water, even though it's salty, water has the effect of neutralizing the koach of the melach. So that is important to know, because if there's any salt left with blood, we may have this concern of this dam perhaps going back into the basar as a result of this hot water, if we can call it that, this mine that is now roteach. But it's not exactly roteach, because we explained that to some extent there is a certain neutralizing effect in the water, that this salt, even though it absorbed up and it still has blood in the very beginning, it will not have any effect and be of no concern to the meat. Why do we want to do niputs if ultimately the water is going to take care of it anyway? Because apparently there is an opinion that holds that, and we've learned that when we spoke about the first hadacha, that is because there's a concern that the dam ba'in could go inside. We're always concerned about dam going in, any dam that's on the surface. So because of that, out of concern for that shita, we lechatchila do niput hamelach as well. We shake off the piece from the salt that's on the surface, and then we insert it in the water. And even if it was just in a little bit of water the Ramah added, that should take care of it b'di'evet. Even though there was no water in the very start, you put it into a bucket that's empty, it's okay. In a little bit of time, we're not concerned that something is going to happen, that the tzir is going to accumulate, or any dam that's still there is going to go back in. In a little bit of time, we're not concerned. The melach did its job in removing the blood in a surface, of course, that's perforated or inclined. And now we're just taking the piece of meat or chicken and placing it in a bucket, which is not necessarily with holes, but we don't have to be concerned for the very few first minutes that there's no water yet in the bucket to rinse it off, because that's not going to be an issue in a few minutes. It's not going to harm.
Oh, so we add water after we put salt?
No, preferably we add the water first.
Oh, so the water is already...
Yeah, the water is already in the bucket, the pail. But you can, as the remote says, in a few minutes nothing is going to happen if you didn't. Yeah.
I misunderstood you, because the way you formulated it sounded like
right.
you moving first, 2 minutes in the bucket before water.
Yeah. No, there's no real, that's what the remote says, there's no real difference. Yeah. Once you did a little bit of a hadacha, then of course there's not that much concern. Even if the remote said you put it in a treif keli, or in a milcha keli, once you rinse it out with a little bit of water, you're pretty safe. So it's always good to have water in the bucket, even though the minhag asks for rinsing it 2 or 3 times, to remove.
And we say that the shaking off is one of them.
And we said that the shaking off can be considered one of the 3. Right. Yeah. All right. So we went on to the next seif, where what happens if somebody maybe was in a rush and forgot to do hadacha altogether.
That's the hadacha now afterwards.
The last hadacha, right? Yeah. Very good, because it's a different halacha as to what happens if you didn't do hadacha at all, right? That was in the beginning. You want to soften the meat. You want to, according to one shita, to be able to allow the salt to extract the blood. So the first hadacha is important. Or according to this mark, according to the other sheet, is you want to remove the dam ba'ain on the surface. Otherwise the melicha won't work, either because it will be clogged with the blood, or because it will be mavliya. So that's a different picture, and a different problem. If a person did not do the first hadacha, and then what do you do? Okay, that was covered in Sif Beis. In other words, it's already salted. You didn't cook it, so you can go ahead and do hadacha. And some say it's too late. You can't do hadacha.
Where are we going now?
So that was Sif Beis. Saying the other hadacha that you were talking about, that was a different problem.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So that could be a problem. And we of course have a halacha there of what to do in a hefsem meruba situation. But this hadacha is a little bit different. So the worst case scenario, you did not do any hadacha achrayna, and we said that if it was cooked without the hadacha achrayna, we have this concern of some dam being in the melach, and because of that, the Mechaber said you need 60 keneged the melach shebo. Why do you need 60 keneged the melach and not keneged the dam? The dam is a problem, not the salt. It can't be chanan, because the Mechaber doesn't hold chanan. Right, so what is it? We don't know, according to the Mechaber, how much dam there is. And therefore you figure keneged the whole melach. But there are shitas who would say, the Roshal, who would say, keneged the whole piece. In other words, because it's also, he calls it an isur davuk. But no one holds like him. As far as I can tell, it's totally not considered, because isur davuk, I mean, the moment you put it into the water, we said it's an amis. The salt comes off. What kind of an isur davuk is there? So the only question is if it's keneged the dam, keneged the melach.
The problem was
that it's bolea maher.
It goes ready to the meat before it spreads out beyond.
Right.
When the other possibility was that it remained in the pot alone.
Yes.
Everything else already left.
It would still be there. Right. That was a second opinion. Right.
So with respect to the second opinion, we have no problem with it.
Exactly. That's also true.
Now, with respect to the first opinion, it certainly will dissolve faster than it goes into the meat. The salt.
That's
will
correct.
First in the water, than it goes into the meat.
That's right.
So with respect to both opinions, what
that's why it
means.
Right.
Well,
it shouldn't really be an issue.
Really a chumrah.
It's according to the if you hold by it, it's a chumrah. But we don't even hold by it. Yeah. Right. Okay. So then there was a long Ramah on this mechaber. In figuring out whether you have shishim or not, the Ramah goes into a little bit more specifics. He says, Kol hakderom mitztaref l'shishim. Everything combines to form 60. V'im yesh bagder kol kach kemo hachaticha shenimlach v'lo udach. And if you have as much potatoes, beans, liquid, and everything, equal amount to the piece of meat that was not hudach, akol shori. Everything is mutar devada ikashishim neged hamelach shalachaticha. You for sure will have 60 against the salt on the chaticha. Why the chaticha atzmo by itself bevada hi shloishim neged hamelach? So we said that the chaticha by itself already would be approximately 30 times the amount of melach that's on it. So that plus an equal amount of food to the piece would equal 60 or more. If you don't have the 60 neged hamelach, afilu lo hudach, afilu lo husam rak b'kli sheni, then the Ramah goes on to a different idea. Then, assuming the worst case scenario where you don't even have shishim, and it was placed even in a kli sheni, which we hold for the most part is not mevashel, but for purposes of this halacha, that this is a salty piece of meat, putting it into a kli sheni is going to be already a problem. Because kli sheni, which is somewhat hot, together with melach or tzir, will be mevashel, or at least will be mavliya, and whatever dam is there will go back in. So that was the concern, the additional concern, that if there's no shishim, good chance that there is, but if there isn't, then even the kli sheni would be a problem. Akol also the me'acha sheyesh melach v'tzir afilu b'kli sheni mevashel. That's what he brings down here, the name of the Mordechai. Okay. Then he adds, what happens at Basar Yavish? What's Basar Yavish? After a while, the meat becomes dry. In other words, it's damp, it's moist, salted, and he left it, took it out, okay, and left it to sit. Now, in this case, of course, we're not talking about that it's very, very moist, because we're talking about that there was no hadacha. Okay, because obviously, if it's moist from the hadacha, there's no question, there's no problem here. So here, it's dry with time. With time, everything that's on the surface has dried up. Meat has become dry. The salt has become dry. It's not the same. It does not have the same koach as it has before, because it already went through the melicha. Plus, whatever dam is in that melech has pretty much dried out. Somehow, according to some poskim, that's how they explain this. The melech has the ability with time to dry out the salt in the salt itself. So basar shenisyabesh, if you've left the piece of meat to dry out, yesh lehatir afilu bekli rishon. Even in a kli rishon, the vada yeshishim neged hamelech she'olav me'acha shekvar nisyabesh. Once it has dried out, you for sure have 60, not only 30, 60 keneged the salt on it, because it's become dry. I haven't seen this, so I can't tell you how this actually happens, that after a while the salt will somehow shrink, or the salt will become less. But that's what he's saying. That with time, the basar that has been left to dry, the melech on it has also dried out. That means the blood has dried out, the melech is less than what it was before.
Well, if you're talking in terms of melech.
Yes. Well, that's what we're talking about.
But it's a crystal. It has water molecules.
Exactly.
Water factors in.
That's what it is. That's Poshup Shot. Yeah. That's what it is.
Which means that lahatrila, you have factored in also the water.
Right. In other words, it has shrunk. So that's an important halacha, that if we need to consider this situation, and it's been a while since it's been sitting, and it has dried out, it's obviously clear that it's dry, then he says you for sure have shishim keneged, because it's already nisyabesh. Abba lechatchila, the Ramah goes on to say, Yizayar afilu bebasar yavesh, even if it's basar yavesh, shelo levashon, not to cook it, or ladichu b'mayim sheyat zelezben, not to definitely rinse it, or insert it in waters that are boiling, below hadocha achroina, that are very hot, I should say, without doing the last hadocha. B'chol zemayir shelo hudach ba'achroina klal, all of this is said when no hadacha was done at all. Avalim hudach rak me'at, rak pam achas, I should say, if it was only done, even with one hadacha, when it's bashal kach and it was already cooked, mutab de b'di'evet sagli be'adocha achas ba'achroina. Even if you only did one hadacha, you rinsed it out real quickly in the bucket, and you didn't do it 2 times with the niput, it's okay. B'di'evet, it's fine, because you probably got rid of most of it. Well, once,
the whole point of the salt.
yes, it is. At this point in time, any dam is the rabbanon. Dam that was nimlach or dam shenizbashal is a dam de rabbanon.
Okay.
So you're right. You are dealing with a de rabbanon question.
And still he's going.
No, we'll throw it. Yeah. No, it helps us to know this later on. We'll talk about. There's a big shaila that came up, and the Taz brings down. So it helps us to know that we're dealing now with a derabanan. So you're right, it is a derabanan nonetheless. You got to get rid of the dam. So there's a lechatchila and there's a b'di'evet way to do it. So b'di'evet with one hadacha, it's fine. All right.
I'm saying, but if there was no hadacha at all, if there's no hadacha,
Then you need to deal with the isur derabanan here. Shishim keneged the melech. Yeah. Because there is dam in the melech. There is
even
some dam.
So the you would have to throw it out.
Why throw it out?
If there was no 6 and there was no hadacha, even that.
That's if you mean if you cooked it.
Yes.
It was cooked and there's no, it would be a problem.
No.
Right.
For the cat.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's not basar b'chalav, so you can feed it to the dog, right? Yeah. It might be a little too salty for them. Right?
It's okay to rinse it out.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, melach shemolcho boy pamachas. This is where we left off. Salt that you've used once. Also limloach bo pam shenis. You can't use it again. Most of the poskim hold with this because it's done its job. Now, is it only because it's done its job? Or, wait a minute, well, what about the blood that's still in it, or could still be in it? Why would you want to use that? And so these two chashois, these two concerns are mentioned Let me see who mentions it. Well, the two chashas are brought down in the Torah's Chatas. Yeah. Ramah here does not say what the reason is. It's understood that most poskim do not allow us to use the melach twice. But in Torah's Chatas he brings down that there is two chashas. What are the two chashas? One is the dam balua in the salt, and one is the problem is that this salt is no longer strong enough. It already worked. It already did its job. You can't do it again. Shach, however, very interesting over here, brings down that if you did it, if you used it, you forgot, it was sitting around all this salt and piled up. Butcher sometimes there's a lot of salt, a lot of pieces of meat. So instead of throwing it out in the garbage, you just put it aside. Someone just went ahead and used it again. He says, b'diavad, it's okay. But what does b'diavad mean? We've had this before. In this case, when we say b'diavad, means if it was already cooked. Because b'diavad doesn't mean, I salted it. Okay, I salted it. What do you want from me? No, but you salted it with recycled salt. We appreciate that you like to recycle things. But you can't recycle the salt. It's no good. We make him salt it again. So the b'diavad the Shach is talking about is only if it was cooked. That makes a difference. Sometimes b'diavad, we have to understand it's a fine line. B'diavad does not always mean, okay, I did it. No, if you can still fix it, you may have to fix it. In this case, you have to fix it. Because the vast majority don't go along with this, that this melach is usable again. However, in Rabbi Akiva Eger, he has a problem with the first chashash. The first chashash, what kind of a chashash it is that it's going to be mavliya back the dam inside? When do we have the chashash that the salt can put back the dam inside? When it's dam ba'in. This is dam plito. This is not dam ba'in. This is dam that has come out. It's not dam ba'in. It's not the same kind of consistency, the same kind of dam. So if you go ahead and put it back on a piece of meat that has not been salted yet to draw out its blood, alidei de tored lemiflet lo bola, as it's expelling its own blood, in that process, it won't be able to soak dam plita. Dam ba'in, there is a chashash. Rabbi Elyahu says he doesn't understand why this should be a chashash over here. Elamai, the only problem that is valid, a good taina, is that this salt has done its job. That yes, but the other chashash, he doesn't understand why somebody would bring up that chashash. This doesn't really apply over here. However, here there's a big question. Big question for you. If you recall, in Siman Tzadik Aleph, okay, in Basar B'Chalav, we spoke about something salty. Melicha she'eno yochel lechal machmas molchoi, right? That that is adjacent to meat or to cheese, depending on which one is the salty one. We spoke about the various scenarios concerning salty foods and how meliach is keroteach. It's a heat. It's a source of heat. And that could be a problem, especially if it's meliach de boilo le'orcha. In other words, that you salt it so much like to preserve it for the road. It's very, very salty. Okay, so maybe it's only asas kedei kli, but that's not the question here. The question is that over there, the Ramah says, and the Shach speaks about it, that some say that if something was salted to extract its blood, and that is why it's salty, right? That once it has salted, once it has done its job of extracting the blood, lo mikre achar kach roteach, right? Some say that once the salt has done, it worked, it took out all the blood, then it's no longer roteach. That's very important to know for Basar B'Chalav, for Taaruvot. It's an important detail. Is that salt still called salty enough that
it's exhausted? It's koyach.
It's koyach, right? If that's the case, and the Shach goes along with that Ramah, and says that we can rely on that, the hefsed beruba erev Shabbos, to say that this is not a problem because posak koyach hamelach. The hakam the Shach here is matir b'di'evet here. If you reuse that salt, based on that shach and
How can
Ramah,
you use that salt to salt anything since it's lost its koyach?
if you're relying on that in Hefsem Meruba Erev Shabbos to say, oh, don't worry about it, it's lost its koyach. You can rely on that, yeah. You can rely on that. Some say that, and you can rely on that, Hefsem. So how would you say here, but the evidence it's okay?
Since it's now basically to do it.
Yeah, right. You understand? Here he's saying, but the evidence, if you use that, but you said over there, no. You're relying on the opinion that says it's gone, the koch is gone. Well, if the koch is gone and you're relying on that opinion that it doesn't aser in the case where it would aser, then how could you say that, oh, no, you could reuse it, but the evid.
Gone or just diminished?
Well, it's diminished enough that it doesn't aser, right? Yeah. So isn't that a good question?
Yeah, sure. I think so.
It's not my question. The Pri Chodesh brings it down. That's where I saw it. The Pri Chodesh says, but wait a minute, what you said over there, what you go by over there, does not fit what you say here. So anyway, so the Pri Chodesh says, I don't have a problem. It says, because I'm not soymech on the svara that the salt lost its koch over there. I don't have the problem. Therefore, I'll allow you to have it b'di'evet.
So he's not soy to himself.
The Pri Chodesh himself says, I don't have a problem because I'll let you have it b'di'evet, because I don't hold of that svara that it lost its koach.
So he doesn't let you have it.
Salt? It's going to stick around for a while. Salty. It's going to have koach for a while. Therefore, of course, it's second grade. It's been used, maybe. Okay, lechatchila don't use it, but b'di'evet, it's still got, like they say in English, it's still got a punch.
Yeah, you see that?
And the Pri Chodesh says, according to me, I'll let you have it, b'di'evet, of course. But according to the Shach, he doesn't understand how you can't say over there it's b'di'evet okay, because posa koach hamelach, and here say, well, b'di'evet you can still use it. If you use it, it's okay. It did its job. How could you? So it's a good question. Why would he say here, that you could use the Shach at least b'di'evet? All right. Then the Ramah adds one more point. I don't know who would want to eat the salt, but the Ramah says you can't have that salt. Don't eat it. That salt is a bloody salt, and you for sure cannot eat it. Now, the Shach brings down here, on this Ramah, Kosu b'sefer apid avrevi, if it's dried out completely, mutar. Again, going back to what we said before about drying up. If the salt completely dried up, the salt apparently, the dam in it perhaps also somehow dissipated, you could have it if you wanted. But Tzorach Iyun and Dina, the Shach is not sure. Because we said even before that Basar Yovesh Mutar Mitam Devada Yeshishim Acha Shekvar Nisyabesh Mashma Holava Ochi Osor. So even with Basar Shenis Yavesh, we're a little bit wary about it, that it most likely has shishi. That's why it's okay, but what if it doesn't? That means we're still concerned about the dam there. So why should you be able to eat it? So the Shach is not so sure that he would allow anybody to eat kind of salt. But okay, there is an opinion that after it's dry, that there's very little, if anything, any blood left. All right. I don't think we're going to be hearing too many questions about, can I have the salt or not? I don't know if that's really an issue. We don't. With what? Oh, very good. I was just going to say that. That's the only possibility. It's not talking about actually eating. It's more like a condiment. Yeah. People, people are poor, and salt was expensive. In some places, they actually use salt as a commodity, right? It was, yeah. Believe it or not, in places where there was no salt, as a currency. As a currency, yeah. Heavily, yeah. So if you live in Yam HaMelach, it's not a problem. It's no big deal. Yam HaMelach, that's you have as much as you want. But in other places, it was a currency. You said. It was used for trade.
Facilitates trading.
Right, for trading objects. I think that's what it was. Yeah. So that's what the Ramah means. That don't eat it. Don't use it. Not only to re-salt pieces of meat, but don't have it either. All right. I saw an interesting crazy flacy. Sometimes a crazy flacy is really, it's always good to learn. He's deep, and he introduces sometimes ideas or questions that nobody thought of, here we're learning pshat, and here he's talking about something that is, why didn't I think of it? Or what would be the case if this were to happen? So on this particular halacha, he asks on the apiravrivi. He has a question on the apiravrivi that the Shach brings down about the salt drying out. And because the salt dries out, apparently, according to this apiravrivi, the dam also dried out. The salt burns the dam, however you want to say it. So the crazy place asks on the apiravrivi, okay, let's assume you're right. The dam is dried out. But wait a minute. Don't you recall from Hilchas Taaruvot, the famous halacha, or I should say also Basar v'chalav, Efshal esoichta is asar? Everybody remembers that, right? Efshal esoichta. What does Efshal esoichta mean? That when something was asar at one given time, it remains asar. Now I may have shishim against it, so I save the whole pot. But that piece, if I can identify it, it remains asar. Once it has become asar, it's asar. We're not talking about chanan now, remember? Two separate things. Without chanan, efshal esoichta is an independent idea. A piece has become asar, it retains its isser. Okay? So the crazy face he asks in the apiravrivi, okay, let's assume the salt that was used to extract blood has been sitting, it has dried out, the blood is barely there, or dried out, or burnt. Whoever told you that you can say that this melech now is mutter? Efshal esoichta is asar. If it was asar, it's asar. Right? And that's true even if the isur is gone. Supposedly, that's what Efshal esoichta means. So the Chavas Das answers this question very nicely. And I think we pretty much covered that when we talked about it. When do we say Efshal esoichta, or why do we say Efshal esoichta is asur? Because we always assume that there's some isur left behind. Remember that? There's always something, we don't know how much. And that is why even if it fell in again to another pot, there's always something there. Efshal esoichta is basically asur. The idea behind it is because there's always something left behind. We don't know how much, but there's always something left behind. But what about in theory, if you can prove that you've extracted every molecule? Remember that? We spoke about that. So the Chavas Das says if you can somehow get all of the isur out, there's no isur left. There's no isur left. There's no Efshal esoichta. Then it's mutter, he says.
If so, then you should be whatever was bolea. If it remains inside.
Yeah.
560 against the amount of bolea by Efshal factor in chanan, it should be enough, the whole piece.
Right. Exactly. Not against the whole piece, yeah. But we don't know how much, so we need 60.
Right. Know what
right. You're right.
I could know that it fell into the pot.
Yes, when you do know in those situations, yes. When those situations, yes. When you do know the amount of isur that fell in, yeah. And that's important because, in Basar v'chalav we discussed, with the putting in, using a melicha spoon in a fleshike pot, and you know exactly how much milk is in that spoon because you just used it in a half an ounce. So there are times that you actually know what the shear is, and you may not need connect the whole spoon or connect the whole pot or piece or whatever it is that you're dealing with. That's correct. So the Chavas Das says very nicely. This is not a problem because it would not really be an Efshal esoichta problem because if it's dried out, it's completely gone. There's no dam left. And that is why the apiravrivi suggests that it would be mutter. Okay, I just thought that was interesting. Here the crazy place, he raises a good question. And the Chavas Das gives a good answer that Efshal esoichta only applies whenever there's a possibility that there's some issues left behind. But if for sure there's no issue left, then it's completely mutter. If for sure, somehow for sure. All right, well we don't know that. So that's what we say Efshal esoichta is also. Okay, so now we've come to Sif Yud, very interesting Sif, because it touches on some very important concepts that we've covered also in Basar v'chalav and in Taaruvot. And that is ne'emanos. Do we trust the goy? Do we trust the child? So maybe first let's read the halacha inside. Oved kochavim meshamesh bebet Israel. You have a goy worker in a Jewish home. V'natana basar b'gdera, and he went ahead and put the meat in the pot. Ve'en yadua im midicho. We don't know if he did hadacha achroina. So before we go on, is this possible? Can a goy cook for you? It says here that he put the piece of meat in the kedera. Right. So the Meforshim explain here, we're obviously assuming that the Bishul Akum is not a problem here, that the Jew lit the fire, according to the Ashkenazim. Right. And according to the Sephardim, that the Jew went ahead and later put the pot on the fire. So here, he just prepared it. He just put it in and prepared it, right? Or added the meat later, or whatever. And there was some Jewish involvement here that precludes, I guess we can use that word, the problem of Bishul Akum. All right? So that's not a problem here. The problem here is we have a suffix. We don't know if he did Adocha Ochroino or not. So the Mechaber says, in Yore Deah ovet kochavim minhag Yisrael, if he knows the custom of the Jews, to rinse, the salt, to water, right? Somchim al dvarav. We can rely on him on condition if there was a Jew walking in and out every so often, or there was a child there who's knowledgeable about these kinds of things, who was watching. What does this tell you? Without going too deep into it, that the Mechaber does not want to just rely on a goy, because a goy does not have nemonos, right? And we know that. Of course, we're going to go into the sugi again, but on the surface, a goy cannot be a witness. A goy cannot be asked, did you do this? If we rely on him, we can't. A goy has no nemonos. What about Mesiach lefi tumoy? Famous type of testimony, which is more indirect than anything. It means that the goy is on his own, volunteering information without being asked or without knowing that we rely on his testimony. That's called, oh, by the way, I took care of everything for you. I washed it and I rinsed it, and we didn't ask him. He on his own. That would be Mesiach lefi tumoy. But the Mechaber didn't seem to say that was okay here. So we have to explain why not. Why doesn't Mechaber say Mesiach lefi tumoy? When is Mesiach lefi tumoy okay, acceptable? Because the manas by goy is not. But Mesiach lefi tumoy sometimes yes. But the Mechaber seems to add here, instead of using the word Mesiach lefi tumoy, which he has used in Basar b'cholav, right? And elsewhere. Remember where in Basar b'cholav we had that? In the very beginning of Tzadik Ches, when you ask a kafela. He says, does this taste, what does it taste like? No, a little bit of milk in it, That's when we had that first encounter with Mesiach lefi tumoy, and even there it's not so simple because it's kafela there. He's but it's more than that. What's pshat in kafela? Is kafela just because he's an expert, or is it because he's concerned about losing his job? So these are some of the issues that are discussed in halacha as to what is exactly required. Do we require mirtat? Mirtat means he's fearful.
Yeah, but here's also different. Over there, eventually you find out that he told you this truth.
Yeah, so not all.
If you trust
very good.
him, then you'll notice that there is a case.
Yeah, so not.
Over here, you'll never know whether he did.
So not all cases are created equal. That's what you're saying. Yeah, over there it's a little bit different. Find it here. Yeah. Right in the beginning of Tzadik Ches. Anyway, so the Shach goes on to ask a question about the Mechaber there, because Min B'She'ino Mino is Midaraisa. Do you need both? Do you need kafela? Yeah, we had a Basar b'chalav too. So the question is whether you need kafela and Mesiach lefi tumoy, or just one of them.
By Taaruvot, what is the kafela going to tell you if there's a treif piece of meat that mixed in with a regular piece of halot? Not by Taaruvot,
no? That's the first Siman of Taaruvot. That's what we first really. Well, we've seen it in Basar b'chalav too. But that it's in Taaruvot, it's where we went into the whole sugya. Anyway, so the Shach goes on to say over there, like you were saying, that eventually you can find this out, you can figure this out, so it's not really an edus, it's not really giving testimony. Okay, so that was the Mechaber. Let's see the Ramah. Ubechad minai husagi. The Ramah says, either one is good. What's either one? O b'mesiach lefi tumoy, either he's on his own saying what happened, shidichu yofe, that he rinsed it well, or shisroel afilu cotton, yoytze v'nichna, and a Jew, even if he's a cotton, yoytze v'nichna going in and out is sufficient. Why? The mirtat, he's fearful. Hoyel v'yodea min hagi Yisrael, since he knows the customs of the Jews. However, mihu imicha le'oy v'kochom shelo yadichu v'lo reshusu, if he did tell the guy, don't do it without me being there, don't do it without my permission, and he went ahead and did it anyway, v'ovar al dvarav osor, then it's osor, because then we see chazinan de'eno mirtat, that he's not afraid, therefore ve'en lismoch gam ken advar, we cannot therefore rely on his words. Which is, by the way, a very interesting point. If a goy ever does not follow your instructions, you may not be able to rely on him on many other things. You know, like they say in English, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You know, he proved that you cannot rely on him. Okay, so let's go into the sugya of nemanos over here. We're dealing with nemanos in a situation of derabanan. There's no question that in a deraisa, there is no kula, there's no leniency. We don't accept the testimony of women, children, definitely not a goy. Unless, what? Oh yeah, well, in-laws, yeah, kroivim, yeah, depending on the situation. But that's the Gemara in Baba Kama, that there's no Messiah, the Fituma was only allowed the Edus Isha. A woman, we don't want her to remain an aguna. A goy says, I saw your husband, he's dead. And the Gemara says that you also have, not only do you have that leniency of the Chachomim that want this woman to get married, but a woman will not want to destroy her life and not do her own investigation search, the Gemara says. Before a woman gets married, she on her own will try to figure out as best as possible. Because if it turns out that her husband comes back and, hi, she has to divorce both.
And her children husband are...
if she has children from the second husband, they would be mamzer. And this has happened. It's a very, very delicate situation. Edus by aguna. But the Gemara nevertheless over there says that Mesiach lefi tuma was not allowed. They made an exception by Edus Isha. So that same Gemara said, but wait a minute, we have some other examples where they did rely on Edus of a Isha and of a cotton. The Gemara brings down, I think there are two examples of where they did rely on the Edus of a Isha and a cotton. So the Gemara answers that in Dine Derabonon, we believe Mesiach lefi tumai. So that's how the Gemara answers those kashas over there, that when it comes to Derabonon, the Rabbanon were makel on Mesiach lefi tumai, and therefore, same thing with Edus Isha, Edus Cotton, and so forth. So there's a big machlokes rishonim. Okay, but what about Goy? What the Gemara resolved over there, that in the Rabbanon it's okay, in the Surah Rabbanon, does that apply also to a Goy, or was that only heter only given to a Jew, a woman and a cotton that are Jewish, but not to a Goy? So that's the big machlokes here. Do we apply that heter in a derabanan to a Goy too, or that heter of the Gemara is only talking about an issue and a cotton?
They made also a distinction of aguna. Aguna is called.
Yeah.
And Ruvas.
Right.
So a distinction that said of Edus. It's not a case where there is a testimony written from the
Correct, yeah, yes.
Verifying
Gilui Milsa, like a Gilui Milsa sometimes. Yeah, there are different kinds of situations. You're very right. That's why they're not all the same, and we have various examples in Halacha, in Orachaim, and in Yore Deah later on, Chelik Beis, about Kalim of a Goy. Did you kasher them or not? Are they new? You say they're new? Maybe they're old. So these halachas of the manas by a Goy surface later on again in all kinds of situations, and it all depends if it's a deraisa or a derabanan. What if it's a glass and not metal? Glass still requires tefillah, but derabanan. Understand? So the situation can sometimes be a deraisa, the situation can sometimes be a derabanan, And the halacha could vary depending on what the circumstances are. So that's why it comes up quite a few times in the Shuchan Aruch whether we can trust the goy or not. So we had it in Basar b'cholov, we have it in Taaruvot. So it's an interesting sugya. So this is the big machlokes rishonim of whether from that Gemara do we say therefore by a derabanan only can we rely on the nemanos of a goy in a mesiach lefi tumah situation? And this, so we have like this. We have the smak that says mesiach lefi tumah goy is also neman, and the smag and the rivah that say no, a goy is not neman by mesiach lefi tumah. That's basically the machlokes. The smag says yes, and the smag and the rivah say no. What is that? Rishonim, yeah. So then we have here a machlokes, appears to be a machlokes, unless you learn the shach a little bit different. There is apparently a machlokes here between the mechaber and Sif Yud and the Ramah. The mechaber doesn't say the words Mesiach lefi tumoy, even though he mentions that in the Beis Yosef on the tour, because the tour goes through the whole sugya here that suggests that Mesiach lefi tumoy may be okay. But la halacha lemaisa here, the mechaber says like the smag or the rivol that the only possibility here is nichnas v'yoytze. He doesn't mention the words mesiach lefi tumo. So the only way we can rely on a goy if he did hadacha achroina is yoytze v'nichnas. But the mechaber does say in Yore Deah vet kochavim minhag Yisrael. He adds that too, and we have to understand that that's important too. He knows that is the custom of the Jews, plus you have a Jew that Yotze v'nichnas, or at least a cotton ben das.
If he doesn't know it's the custom of the Jews, he doesn't have Yotze v'nichnas.
Exactly. In other words, he needs to be aware of this situation.
That he's being supervised with respect to doing that.
Right. Whereas the Ramah seems to say that one of the two is enough. One of the two meaning either Mesiach lefi tumoy or mirsas. In the mechaber, it's only indicated that you need a form of mirsas, that he is afraid. He doesn't want to be caught doing the wrong thing. He's afraid of losing his job. All right. So now let's go a little bit deeper into that. The smak. If you read the makor of the words in the smak says like this: he's believed Mesiach lefi tumoy, and he adds the words kol sheken if he is aware of the minhagim Yisrael. Very interesting. He says kol sheken if he's aware that this is what Jews do and this is what they require. So both Mesiach lefi tumoy and kol sheken, the more so that I would trust him if he's aware. Well, wait a minute. Well, that doesn't sound right. If he's aware, that's not Mesiach lefi tumoy anymore. All the poskim ask, what do you mean kol sheken that he knows? Because and the mechaber is repeating the language, but the mechaber doesn't say the word kol sheken. Okay, kol sheken. That's a good question on the word kol sheken. The more so if he knows the Jewish custom of rinsing.
And that's without mirta.
We're not talking about mirta. The smak. The smak says Mesiach lefi tumoy is acceptable here. Oh, by the way, while you were gone, I took care of everything. I washed it, and I cooked it, and I put it in, and and he's aware that the Jews do this. But the Smak says, you have Mesiach lefi tumoy, the more so that it would be acceptable if his Mesiach lefi tumoy is in a situation where he's also familiar that is what is done by Jews. So the person asks, well, if he's familiar, that's not called Mesiach lefi tumoy. Everybody asks.
What I understand is kavana.
Yeah.
Kavana is, as he's Mesiach lefi tumoy, since he knew at the time he was doing it that Jews do,
right?
So he had a motivation to actually do it. So now that he's Mesiach lefi tumoy reporting that he did, it's not that because he knew it you can trust the report, but the report that he's giving to you, Mesiach lefi tumoy,
right,
is you can be confident that this is that he did it because at the time he did it, he knew that that's the minhag, but he wanted to perform it.
Yeah, but the question is, as the Bach says, how could this be a real Mesiach lefi tumoy if he knows that that's what is expected of him?
Expected of him.
Yeah.
So he knows it's the minhag.
He knows that that's what they do.
Right.
Yeah.
He doesn't mean that he fears that if he doesn't do it, he's going to.
Right. Okay. So that's why it's You're right. I mean, but the Bach seems to present this kasha that
it makes sense to present
which makes sense. Why use the word kol sheken here? But you're right too. The Taz and Shach say something very similar on this. The Taz. Oh, by the way, the Bach says therefore he wants to be magia here. The Bach wants to make a little correction here that it doesn't say kol sheken.
So what's the
Bach and the Drisa.
So you leave away the kol sheken, what remains?
That not kol sheken. Yore Deah min Hagei Yisrael. No, it was not kol sheken biyodeh min Hagei
What does he
Yisrael.
gain by that?
The
problem.
The kol sheken doesn't make sense.
No,
It's very
kol sheken
difficult.
does make sense because he's saying if he's Mesiach Lefi Tumo, you can trust him.
The more so that the Messiah Lefi Tumah is good. What?
No. The more so the Mesiach Lefi Tumo is good. But the more so you can expect that he actually did it if he knows the minhag, because then he has a motivation to actually practically do it.
Yeah.
So the fact that he knows the minhag is an additional.
Let me take it back. Let me take it back from what I called the Bach. It was Magia. That we're not talking about that he's Yore Deah min Hagei Yisrael. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, not kol sheken. He's just bothered by the kol sheken, but not just by the word kol sheken, but the whole idea that kol sheken that he knows min Hagei Yisrael. So he wants to get rid of the problem altogether. Yeah. I believe that was the case. So anyway, the Shach and Taz, they say don't be magia at all. You could still have a situation where he's Yore Deah min Hagei Yisrael and still can be Masiach Lefi Tumah.
Right.
Yeah. Each one says it a little bit differently. The Taz says you can tell mikishur hadvarim. You can tell from the direction of the conversation.
Right.
You can see if that's a Mesiach Lefi Tumah or not. Says it's not a problem. So what if he knows? You can tell, like you were saying more or less too. You can tell from the direction of the conversation if he's really being on his own saying things, or is he really, answering. What? Yeah. That's what the Taz says. So the Taz doesn't have to says I don't have to be magia anything. But you still have to answer why does it say kol sheken?
So that's what I'm saying. So the kol sheken is the fact that he knows that this is Jew and he's working here for a Jew suggests that he probably went ahead and did it because of that. Otherwise, why would he do it?
Yeah, so that's exactly what the Taz says. So the Taz says the reason why the Smak would have said the word kol sheken about this, that he knows, is that this is an additional svara to the Masiach Lefi Tumah, why he probably did it right.
Right.
I have, and it's useful. It comes in handy, because otherwise, why here are we mater and somewhere else are we asering? Here we have the additional svara to say, you know what, there's a good chance the guy did it too, because he's also familiar with procedures that the Jews do. So this kol sheken is a positive, it's an advantage. Right. It's not taking away or saying, it's only because of this. No, it's because of this and because of this. I hold Mesiach Lefi Tumah, but especially here, I have additional svara of Mesiach Lefi Tumah. So that's how the Taz explains why the kol sheken altogether. Very nice. So, like you said, very good. You were mechaven. Yeah.
So it doesn't go on Naaman, but it helps if he knows.
Yes.
Exactly. Not legabe the nemanis.
Not 100, not just nemanis. Yeah. But the two together. Right. The two together.
I'm not saying he's competent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Shach brings down very similar. He also disagrees with the Bach and says Mesiach Lefi Tumah is neman, even when he knows the minhag Yisrael, if it's a situation that would qualify as a Mesiach Lefi Tumah. What's that? He didn't tell you, he told somebody else. That could be a Mesiach Lefi Tumah. In other words, don't ever tell me that you can't have a Mesiach Lefi Tumah here just because he knows. There can be a situation which is a Mesiach Lefi Tumah. Example, he told somebody else, he didn't even tell you. Told your mother-in-law.
That you said for more.
Yeah. He told somebody else, not even you. Oh, by the way, no. All right.
Also, now you can trust your mother-in-law.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what's interesting is in Kuf Lamed Zayin by Hechsher קיהן, like I was telling you before, the Machaber says there that a goy does not have, there's no Mesiach Lefi Tumah by a goy by Hechsher קיהן that are asur. Was it kasher or not? There, the Ramah didn't say anything. There is actually it's a very important halacha, because we clearly see the shita of the Mechaber that he does not hold that Mesiach Lefi Tumah by goy is good. And there the Ramah has no problems. Here the Ramah says it's okay. You see, right? What did we just say? The Ramah says either one or the two is okay, either Mesiah Lefi Tumah or Mirsas. In Hechsher Kelim, where the Mechaber tells us his shita about Mesiah Lefi Tumah clearly, because here he doesn't. Here the words don't appear. There he says a goy does not believe Mesiah Lefi Tumah in Hechsher Kelim. The Ramah doesn't say anything. What's the difference between there and here? So the Shach explains, as is seen in Taaruvot, in Siman Tzadik Ches, that all the poskim in Samach Ches were maskim that Mesiach Lefi Tumah can be acceptable in that situation, but not in every situation. When is it not? B'mokum de'ischazek isura. So even though we are going to allow for Mesiach Lefi Tumah in certain situations, that is not when there is a chazaka, a cheskas iser to begin with. And that's why over there the Ramah doesn't say anything. The kli streif. Who said it's kosher now? The guy? I don't believe him. Because this cheskas iser, you understand what I mean by cheskas iser? The status, the default status, is osir. So I'm trusting the guy to tell me it's now kosher? I kashered your oven, by the way. It's ready for Pesach. I don't trust him. It's chametz.
Because his words are supposed to introduce a change in the mitzvah. It has so far chazakah that it's not kosher.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, here the words of the goy are supposed to see us.
Right.
Until
From an
now
iser to a heter. Right.
Right. Until now, if there was a chazakah that it's aser. And now what he says will remove the iser and introduce that it's now a heter. So that is a very powerful intervention.
Right.
For that, it's
We don't believe him. Right. So the
Isn't that the question here?
Oh, so we're going to get to that. So therefore, the Shach wants to say the reason why here it may be even mutter according to the Mechaber, as another, I don't know, was the way the Ramah understands the Mechaber. The Shach says there was one possibility is that the Mechaber does not hold the Mesiach Lefi Tumah here. He doesn't even mention the words. But based on the way that since the Ramah doesn't say Yesh Oimrim, all it says is Bechad Menayos Sagi. One of them is enough. It could be that even according to the Ramah, that he understood that the Mechaber would agree with Mesiach Lefi Tumah, and the reason why here it would be okay is because you have an additional reason why to believe the Goy. Why? Goyim are makpid on the cleanliness of the meat that is about to be cooked. Makpid kapti al nekiyut. So if you have it like we said before with the Taz, if you have an additional svara to say that this guy could have done his job right, then this is not your typical Mesiach Lefi Tumah. You have additional reasons. The guy is clean. I'm going usually cleaning. I mean, why he's going to stuff this, put the salty meat into the pot? Come on, goyim are makbid. It depends.
Maybe the mitzvah has changed.
Maybe the mitzvah has changed. Huh? Are they clean? Are they careful? Yeah. What about all the mice they have found? Right. I guess that they can't control. Not the external things, right? Yeah.
But what you could say maybe that oversight here through the government.
Yeah.
Maybe that supervision.
So anyway, so you're right. Here, there's a chazaka of cheskas dam. So if anything, it should be also just as much as over there it is. So you have to say that here there's an additional svara which permits the Mesiach Lefi Tumah even in a cheskas iser, because there is a form of cheskas iser. You have dam. Why should I trust him that it's done, that it's taken care of? Even though you can argue, there's room for argument on this cheskas iser, by the way. But for now, let's just go ahead with what the Shach says, that because it's understood from the Taz and from the Shach and from others that here there's an additional svaras to say that it's mutter. It's not just plain Mesiach Lefi Tumah. Even though lemaisa, it does appear that the Mechaber clearly says mirsas is the reason why he's allowing it. But the Shach says it may be possible that the Mechaber would also agree because you have an additional svara. Okay. So either you have the Shach says that the Mechaber would also agree to it because you have another svara, or you have the Mechaber clearly saying, as he says here, that I don't take Mesiach Lefi Tumah, lemaisa, like I said in Hechsher Kelim, because of what you said. There and here are very similar, that there is a cheskes iser of so. Wherever there's a cheskes iser, we don't accept Mesiah Lefitumah, because Mechaber himself does accept Mesiah Lefitumah by kafela. I mean, wherever there's additional reasons, it's not that it's out of the question, unacceptable ever. In a derabanan, it's okay. Now,
by the what we're talking about
remember, we're talking about still the derabanan, even though it's cheskes iser, it's still a derabanan. Where? No, I gave that as an example.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Why not?
It's
Maybe it's already nice in time of Gam. It's before Pesach.
No, but it's.
All right, that it would depend on that. Yeah, if Choser V'niyah is a problem or not. If it's bottle, remember that the whole thing of bittul, and it was bittul before Pesach, so it is bottle b'shishim. So it's.
But that's what Choser destroys.
No. So it all depends on that. It all depends on if it's yovish or where there is Choser V'niyah or. Right. So it depends if it's a Choser V'niyah or not. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but that was only my.
In that case,
Yes. Yeah. You're right. In that case, it would be lechumrah. Would you trust them or not? Yeah. Unless you introduce additional svaras, but since it's a deraisa, perhaps it wouldn't help. We're going to see that in Rabbi Elyahu soon. That's the next. Rabbi Elyahu talks about something similar to that. So, very interesting to hear. Apparently, the Mechaber is leaving out Mesiah Lefitumah for good reason, either because he doesn't hold of it, or like you said, it's a cheskes iser. There's dam to begin with, just like by hechsher kelim, and therefore only mirsas helps. Like by cholav akum. You have a mashgiach going in and out. He doesn't have to be there the whole time watching it. Making sure that there's no non-kosher milk being introduced. And today they're using cameras. I can see you. I can see you from 600 miles away through my remote cameras. Right. Some accept it as cholav Yisrael.
Why not?
You can see everything that's going on. The
Gemara,
that's a mirsas. You're going to be caught.
Of the Gemara is a little chart that's on the top of it with the back turned to the going nose. If he stands up and just turns around and looks, he'll see it. And that's
what you have here. Even if it's yeah. So anyway, here we have an additional svara of the goyimar makbid and the kiyut. Okay, there's a whole prima godom here that we won't discuss right now about why we don't trust the goy b'meliga sa'of. There's a whole siman there about removing the feathers of a chicken using hot water. It's a problem if you haven't salted the meat yet. You don't want to put it in hot water, but hot water makes it easier for you to pluck. So you have to be careful not to put it into real hot water. Kli rishon, but kli sheni perhaps the most. Shena yatzoledes. Otherwise, you're going to ruin it for purposes of melicha. Later, melicha won't be able to work if the pores are sealed or whatever that hot water does to the meat. So there's another question of what happens if a guy says, I didn't use the boiling hot water, I just use it here. You can't really trust him over there. It's also a problem of a cheskes iser, because you haven't salted yet. So Mikvaot discusses the ramifications of Mesiah Lefitumah over there, why we don't accept it. The Beis Yosef and the Shach seem to imply over here that even if the guy doesn't say anything, that if there's mirsas, that he probably did it right, if he knows Minhag Yisrael. And that's why the Mechaber added, if he knows Minhag Yisrael, why does he add that too? Because even if he were not to say anything, we assume that he did it right. Okay, so here there's an interesting Rabbi Elyahu Kin, in mentioning in this shach about cheskes iser, he points to Siman Kuf Yud Ches, that mirsas, what we're using and relying on here according to the Mechaber, can even help us in a situation of an Isur D'Oraisa. Whenever you have mirsas, you wouldn't have a problem of cheskes Isur so much, even in an Isur D'Oraisa situation. Cheskes Isur. Mirsas is a much more powerful heter than Mesiah Lefitumah. So that's the Rabbi Elyahu Kin here. That the svara of mirsas can help even in a Isur D'Oraisa situation, not just in a derabanan situation, which is what we're talking about over here. So here we're talking about there's a cheskes isur, but it's only an isur derabanan. If there would be mirsas, it could even help us in a situation where there is a deraisa. Okay, just to finish up, I saw a very interesting nekudas hakesef taz. Big argument here. Ooh. I thought it was interesting, but it's a little bit lengthy if we take it all apart. So I'm just going to give you an overview of it because it's a fascinating machloikis between the Nekudas HaKesef, the Shach over here on the side, and the Taz. The Taz was asked a question. This is the way it works. By a balabasta. She cooked a piece of meat that she doesn't remember if she did a docha achron or not. I'm sorry, if she doesn't remember if she salted it. Yeah. Her question was, you know what? I was so busy, I just don't remember. I just started cooking. I don't remember if I salted this piece of meat or not. It's already cooked. What do you do? Huh? No, the meat was The meat was rinsed before. It was soaked, I should say. Yeah, it was done. That could possibly even the butcher did. She just doesn't remember. It could happen. Supposedly, it could. What now? So the Taz wants to be mechadish that it's a suffix derabbanan lekula. Why? It's by this point in time, the blood is cooked, or the blood is salted. Blood that's cooked or salted. Now it's a derabbanan. So he says it's a suffix on derabbanan now. And then the Nekudas says no, but it starts off as a suffix d'oraisa that has become a suffix derabbanan. You can't say that. Something that starts off and has become for another reason and for some other thing that was done to it.
Right. What was it at the time when she was salting it?
No, she doesn't remember if she salted it.
Now she does.
Now she doesn't. Yeah.
No, he says the suffix started then. What was the suffix then? Either she salted it or not. There was no suffix.
What do you mean?
Well, what was this? When was then?
The suffix. Right now she cooked it.
Right now she cooked it, but now,
Yeah.
so now it's
Now she has a suffix.
Right. So he says
So
it started already then.
Yeah.
The question is when is then?
No. So the Taz says it has become a suffix derabbanan.
Shach.
Yeah, the
Started
Shach
then.
says you can't say that it's a suffix derabbanan.
Why?
It has a cheskas iser. It has a problem that has begun from before. It has the dam. It's a suffix on a deoraisa dikadin, not on the derabbanan right now. Now that it has become.
So what was the suffix then? At the time that it was
On the dam.
well, was there a suffix at the time of the dam?
No, but it's not so
I mean,
much.
did there exist
Yeah.
a suffix before
No,
it was cooked?
no. It doesn't. Of course, there's no suffix before it's cooked. But you cannot. Yeah.
So that's the point of the
Yeah.
suffix.
No.
The
Yeah.
point of time that the suffix came into the world.
Yeah.
We're talking already
Well,
about
that's
the
obviously that's part of their part of their different ways of analyzing the situation. You're right. But I'm just briefly giving you an overview of the differences of how to look at it, because what the Shach says is a very good point. I mean, a lot of poskim agree with him, even though they understand the Taz. It's not such a simple matter. I just, instead of going into into the whole sugya, just give you the highlights, the main points. The etzem iser here of dam is minatora. That's what the Shach says. Then the Taz goes on to say that there is also roiv.
When the Taz says it's the Rabbanan because they've been cooked.
Yes. The Taz also presents that there's a situation here of a roiv. And roiv we know is stronger than chazaka, usually. What's the roiv here? Most of the time women salt the chicken or the meat before they cook it. The Shach doesn't, the Nekudas HaKesef says here there's no roiv, and he doesn't explain why not. Which is interesting, but he says here there's no roiv.
Because in order to have a roiv, you have to remember the different events. What's the
It's a problem because there's a maise involved. That's why it's not so
what I'm
simple.
saying.
He doesn't say that, but it could be because there's a tolube maise that she has to have. It's not just a roiv. Roiv neget chazaka. Chazaka cheskasiser here. Roiv is adif. Roiv is always better than chazaka. Roiv is stronger than a
You
chazaka.
don't have in the roiv. The first time you did it should say. The third time you did it,
Yeah.
all have to add up.
But here there's a
What adds them up? Like what?
No, most of the time women do salt the piece of meat before they cook it. That's what he wants to say.
Right, that's what
Yeah,
he wants to say.
yeah, but so he says you can't. Roiv doesn't apply here. He doesn't say why not, but it could be because it's a rova tolu b'maise. That's what I saw others explain. That's why it's not just a simple matter. You don't always say rova tolu b'maise. That in itself is a machloikis. In Hilchos Taaruvot, we went through a lot of the shittas of suffix, fexfeka. What is a suffix? What is not a suffix? So it's not so simple. I mean, it is a bigger machloikis than what it appears here. And not everybody subscribes to what the Shach says, even though he seems, this is not a roiv. It could be that the Taz is right. This also is considered a roiv. But anyway, that's part of the problem over here. The Shach also writes that besides the fact, how could she forget something like that? something that requires a lot of work, salting and this, you don't easily forget. So
She was on the cell phone call.
yeah, well, that could be. Back then, I'm sure they had something else other than cell. Yeah. So anyway, so the Shach points out over here that you cannot easily say that she just got carried away and forgot. So interesting kasha, interesting scenario. He wants to be machmir, by the way. He disagrees. I would not have let her have that piece of chicken. Others, argue about this. Should we rely on this behefzer merugah or not? But anyway, that's the question over here. Is it a real suffix? Does this constitute or qualify as a suffix derabanan or not? Because of the derabanan being now, or since it started off as an isra, so is there rov or not? As far as the servants in the house are concerned, we say that there is mirsis by the mechaber, right? So the Shach points out over here, in the name of the Apirav Rebbe, he says, that only Abdoi v'shivchosoi, because of the Sefer needed the be'abdoi v'shivchosoi shayach mirsis. If it's your servant or your maid, then you say mirsis. What if he's not your employee, your regular employee? What if you just, asked for some help? If it's not your regular employee, if the Shach learns from this Apirav Rebbe, then there would not be shayach mirsas. What does he have to lose? He doesn't have his job, and doesn't have anything to lose. So I saw in the Yad Avrom, there's a famous sefer Yad Avrom, that says that if you don't have somebody who is a regular employee where mirsas would apply, then you need yotze v'nichnas. According to the Shach. In other words, the Shach would require on that situation yotze v'nichnas. He's afraid. If he's afraid, you don't really need perhaps yotze v'nichnas. Just mirsas alone is sufficient. The fact that here we say yotze v'nichnas or shubkotum ben das means that this is instead of mirsas in a situation where he's not your servant. But obviously, from the mechaber, we're talking about that he's meshamash bebeis Yisrael. So the mechaber seems to be not making a distinction, that just you need mirsas and you need going in and out.
Well, the going in and out is a foundation for the mirsas.
Okay, so that's what the Yad Avram explains, according to the Shach, that mirsas only applies when he has something to lose.
Right. So
he's your employee. If he's not your regular employee, there's no real mirsas. And therefore, you need yotze v'nichnas.
I understood that that's the Avram, but that doesn't seem to be what the Mechaber doesn't see splitting the yotze v'nichnas.
According to the Shach, the way Yad Avram explains that if it's his mishar, so if it's his employee, then you always have mirsas. He's afraid of losing his job, even if there's no yotze v'nichnas.
But he would have to be caught.
He would have to be afraid. The Maisa, the Meforshim explained that it all depends if he has what to lose or not. That's what determines mirsa. So, an employee or not. But you're right, from the Mechaber, it doesn't appear to be that he's Mechalik. He just says...
Because why should he be afraid if there's no vision? No one is supervising him. He's
afraid of losing his... Yeah.
He has a job to lose, but no one is supervising him, so he can always lie.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of the supervision is to...
Right, you're right. Yeah, that intensifies, that makes it stronger. But if he's his regular employee, maybe that by itself could be mirsas too. Anyway, so that's just an additional idea that the Yad Avram presents you based on what the Shach writes over here, that it's understood that mirsas only applies in a regular employee. What do I learn from that? That if it's not your regular employee, then you have no choice. Then you would have to have yotze v'nichnas. So that's the question, much more so than if he's no yotze v'nichnas and just your employee. I would agree with you.
I don't think that anyone relies on that today.
That also could be the case, yeah. How much or how often, as long as he knows that you're coming in once in a while.
Not sure when.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah, sure.
Not sure when. It's very
Not sure. But the point is, if he's your employee, and especially if it's some... Oh, by the way, I failed to clarify. If you know yotze v'nichnas, you can always find out if you did hadacha or not by tasting it. Is this salty or not? This piece of meat salty or not? What do you do? So he's afraid of saying a lie, because he could easily be caught, because kosher meat tastes salty.
Tastes different.
Tastes different than kosher. So I think that was the deal. that they say why he would not necessarily want to lie. So there's always mirsus if he's your servant, if he's your worker. If he's not your worker, you for sure have
after the
to.
fact
But,
doesn't make a difference.
exactly, but based on what the Mechaber said, we see that you need both. Okay.
So
It's not-
we can't see